Good afternoon.
Good evening, afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you to our business alumni panel discussion. And we have three brilliant alumni on our panel today. And we are very blessed to have Sello, Joshua, and Velani joining us to answer your questions and just to explain a little bit more about themselves, their journey, their experience, and tips that they have for you for our grade 9 and 11 students, and how they are actually going to or how they went through their journey, and little things that they have learned. So I'd like to introduce Sello. He currently lives in London, so he is from the United Kingdom. He's streaming in from there. He was an investment analyst at 91, an active investment manager with over £100 billion in assets around management. He is now an investment analyst at Finley Park. He began his career as a credit analyst at Seapoint Global Holdings in New York, and he speaks highly of the numerous mentors and close friends who have guided him along his journey. Sello graduated from Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut, where he studied maths and economics. Upon graduation, he received his Master's and Dean's Prize for exemplifying qualities of hard work and sheer determination. Sello, I'm sure all your teachers will remember you for those qualities, even at school. During his undergrad years, Sello was a staff writer for the Yale Daily News, reporting on campus news, and as well as events in the greater New Haven area. In addition to his bachelor's degree in economics from Yale University, he holds a professional certificate in business from Columbia University, also from the city of New York. Sello is a South African native. He matriculated from Crawford College, Chanton in 2008, where he received an 80% scholarship upon maintaining a minimum grade point average. He was awarded a scholarship after his grade 9 maths teacher, Miss van der Rensburg, identified his unique potential and eagerness to succeed. I think this is very pertinent to especially our grade 9s and 11s out there who are listening, because during his first year at Crawford, Sello was ranked 10th in his class. In grade 11, he made the top 10, and at the beginning of grade 12, he was in the top 5. So it is all a marathon, grade 9s and 11s. The third trimester preliminary exams in his matric year, he ranked the top 3. And then when he got his final matric results, he was named the Duck Scholar. So from 10th position to 5th, top 5, top 3, really, we can see learning is about a marathon. He applied to a number of universities in the United States after graduating and receiving 100% in mathematics. Interestingly enough, Ms. Perkins was Sello's maths teacher, and they still have a very, very special bond and a relationship, a friendship that they have had over the years. He received distinctions in advanced maths, physics, chemistry, accounting, English, and Afrikaans. His average mark for these subjects in matric were in the upper 90s. So when you hear from Sello, this man is a success. He is the epitome of what hard work is about. And so I would like to introduce to you Sello, who is a very well-remembered student. Thank you for joining us, Sello.
Thanks for having me, Tammy.
So after that introduction, we are moving on to Mr. Joshua Jankelow, and some of you may know Josh because he matriculated from Crawford in 2019. Also the absolute epitome of what a Crawford student is, and he matriculated with 10 distinctions, and he has just completed his freshman year at Stanford University. Those, I'm not sure if everybody knows, but to actually get into, as an international student, into Stanford University is absolutely phenomenal, Joshua. And he is just coming in, he's actually in South Africa, Johannesburg, with you some of his experiences as a freshman at Stanford. During his tenure at Crawford Santon, he won the National isiZulu Olympiad, was the first student to receive a summa cum laude blazer, the South African National Debating Team in 2018 and 2019. He wrote and published his play Oedipus Rex, which won Best Original Scripted Feeder. At Stanford, Josh is really making his mark. He was recently elected to the undergrad Senate and selected as the vice president of the Stanford Israel Association, head of learning for Jewish Student Association, and is the Stand With Us fellow on his campus. He is also the president of the American Enterprise Institute's Executive Council at Stanford, where he is responsible for hosting guest scholars and speakers from the prestigious think tank. So as Joshua did when he was at Crawford, he made open new paths. He made new roads for students to follow him in. And even now we see that happening at Stanford. He is getting involved, he is interacting. And Mr. Joshua Jankelow.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Josh. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. I'm still going to say Miss Panel. I can't get used to having graduated and not using educational epithets. So just for today, I'll get used to it, I promise, ma'am.
You're welcome to call me Tammy. And then we also have Mr. Velani Mboweni. Velani is the co-founder and CEO of Lula, an award-winning venture-backed mobility startup that connects company commuters to private shuttles, sustainable and productive commuting in Africa. I think we have realized that there is a huge need and a gap in the market, Velani, with this commuting within Johannesburg and South Africa. And he started in the tech industry in 2008 with a mobile payments company and later founded 2 ventures prior to starting Lula. Central to his efforts is the mantra, serve people, solve problems. And I'm going to ask the panel, maybe we can start with that. Velani's mantra of serve people, solve problems in a business realm. And this guides him to use technology for good in the world. He is a fellow of the Harambeen's Entrepreneur Alliance, USA, as well as the Alibaba eFounders Fellow in China, a political economist by trade. He holds a BCom Philosophy, Politics and Economics from the University of Tehran, a BA Honours in Politics and PDBA from Wits Business School. Velani, in his spare time, which it doesn't sound like he has much, but he also enjoys cooking, reading, has a deep love for science and aviation. And typical Crawford alumna, he was recognized as a top 200 young South African by the Mail and Guardian and a top 30 under 40 by Fast Company magazine. Velani, we are so honored to be welcoming you to our panel. And thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time out to our 3 guest speakers. And I'm now going to hand over to you to just start the debate, the discussion on business, your journey, your experiences. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for the kind introduction, Ms. Panel. I'm going to follow Josh and say, just because we've left Crawford doesn't mean that all the respect that you taught us has left us. So that is something we'll take to the grave. So I'll definitely keep calling you Ms. Panel until further notice. So really great to be here with everyone, and super excited to see Sello again. I was a grade 9 when Sello was a matric, and I remember looking up to him, especially as he got all the awards and his blazers, and was such a great person to be engaged with. And Josh, I obviously haven't met you as yet, but when I come back to Stanford, I'll definitely make some time to connect with you. But yeah, I think, ladies and gentlemen, if I think Ms. Panal put the floor out to us. I don't know if you guys want to discuss our business journeys, or how would you like us to keep the conversation flowing?
I think, Velani, if you're going to start with the business journey and stuff and give advice on what subjects to take and where to go study and that type of introduction where we're going, I think that if we start there and the others can follow in and we can add on as we go, and then we'll open up for questions at the end. I don't know if you guys want to do it like that. The guys can just raise their hand and we'll recognize them, or they can just type the question. We'll answer like that.
Sure, sounds good. So I think just to get that started, I did a discussion with one of the universities a few weeks ago, and it's very important for us to kind of distinguish between being a business person and being an entrepreneur. Now, if you're a business person, you typically look at ways in which you can make things more efficient and kind of take, what we call the means of production together, and put a new product or service out into the market, which is kind of iterative of what's already in the market, right? So if you think of Woolworths, think of Pick and Pay, all of these kind of retail stores are just iterations of what already exists. On the other side, you have what we refer to as entrepreneurs, and I think that's more of my core focus. Being an entrepreneur, you're effectively a problem solver. And I think the beauty about being in South Africa, in Africa, and even the world in general is that there are an infinite amount of problems, right? So if you had to close your eyes right now and say, what are some of the problems that I faced coming to school or going home or during the course of my day? You could probably name more problems than you have fingers on your hands. And when you look at that, the critical thing about that is being able to kind of resound or chat with anyone who experiences similar problems. And you think you kind of figure out a business model or a way in which you can monetize that. And that then leads the basis of which you can become an entrepreneur. So someone who uses business or the principles of commerce to solve a problem that is meaningful enough for society. Now, I'll take you from my journey. When I was at Crawford, my first venture actually was illegal. And I say this because, we weren't allowed phones at school. We didn't even have Wi-Fi at school. But there was this incredible app that we had called Mixit. It was similar to WhatsApp, but really, really, really low resolution messaging service that people used to chat to people during school hours, and especially during our math lessons. And so my idea came from the fact that my parents never used to give me lunch money. And most of the times I'd be running to school late and I'd leave my lunchbox. So I didn't have any, lunch to eat or like juice to drink. And I was always playing soccer during break. So what I realized is that in order to make money, I needed to find a way in which I could generate revenue by solving a problem. And so through a payments company that my family had invested, I was able to sell airtime from my mobile phone under my desk to all the kids in the classroom so that they could log into Mixit and chat to all their friends, both in school and out of school. And I found that I would make quite a bit of money, and I'd be the first one at Nino's at second break buying, a Fanta orange or, a grape Tizer, just in order to, just live a little bit better because I had forgotten my lunch at home. And that was my first kind of connection. And yes, of course, it wasn't legal to, sell airtime or let alone have phones at school, but there was a market. There was a demand for young rebellious teenagers who couldn't resist the urge to use Mixit to communicate with their friends. And that was the first time I really realized that there was a problem that we all have. There is someone who's willing to take the risk and provide a solution to it. And that is when I realized that this is how you kind of make your way in the world of entrepreneurship. Fast forward a few years, and after university, I had started my current business, which is called Lula, which really dealt with the issue of transportation to work and back, and now subsequently to schools and back. You know, the continent is heating up really, really fast, and, you know, public transport is not really a good, you know, choice for most people. Sitting in your car on your own or driving with your parents costs you a lot of time and is bad for the environment. And so we built a technology business that would group people into what we call clusters and share rides with them to work and back with vehicles on the Lula platform. And so without going into more detail, and you know, and boring you with all the stuff we've done in our journey, I can share with you that if a problem is big enough and you have enough experience or enough passion to solve this really, really big challenge, that is where you'll be able to attract enough talent or people to work with you, as well as raise enough money to support your ideas as time goes on. When it came to choosing subjects, I always chose what I was really, really passionate about. So I did physics or physical science, I did biology, I did geography, I did math paper 3, I did Zulu. I did all the things that really made me happy. And the secret to this was that I wasn't doing the subjects just because they were cool. I did the subjects because I understood why they mattered. As Ms. Panal said in the beginning, I have a strong love for aviation. And of course, you can't fly a plane if you don't understand your map work or your geography. And so I began to excel in geography because I understood the application of why it mattered in real life. However, the trick is, as you finish, you know, high school and university, the most critical thing is about the problems you seek to solve and how those problems are not just applicable in South Africa or Johannesburg, but in Africa and in the rest of the world. And if you can find a problem that's big enough to solve, you can then find yourself on a path that can attract the right talent, the right capital, and the right people to work with you as you solve a problem. If you're an entrepreneur, you're fundamentally always solving problems and serving people. It is not good enough to just want to make money. Because I can tell you, it is easier to rob a bank and make money than it is to be an entrepreneur. And so as you choose your subjects and as you think about where you're going in life, focus on the problems that you are passionate about solving, and everything else will follow from there. So I'll leave it there and I'll hand over to Sello and Josh to share more about their experiences, either as business people or the respective path they've taken in choosing their subjects going forward.
Josh, why don't you go ahead?
Sure, no problem. Yeah, I've never felt quite so baby-faced or unemployable, if I'm quite honest. And there's, you know, very little I can say or speak to about my experiences in penetrating the market or rising the ranks of investment banking firms. But what I think that I can relate to, which Velani spoke about, was problems. And I think back to a speech that I gave at our valedictory in which I said that the core mantra of our grade at the time, and one that I think a lot of people could benefit from, is what could go wrong? And the conclusion, which I thought was quite beautiful, was that, you know, often our biggest fears cannot manifest themselves. And by asking what could go wrong, nothing will seem that difficult at all. And what I love so much about that memory is just how atrociously incorrect I was. Because that was December of 2019. And as it turns out, quite a bit could go wrong. All of this and the 2D interactions that we've been having for 2 years, the economic crises, the neo-world wars that have almost sparked, I think really spoke to the fact that a lot can and often will go wrong. And so I find myself here anxiously trying to defend my little thesis and reinvent the meaning of the mantra of what could go wrong and how you can learn from that sort of thing in your high school journey and beyond. And I did learn, fortunately, in one quick statement at Stanford from an admissions officer who was responsible for admissions from sub-Saharan Africa, what it takes to get into Stanford as opposed to, you know, just your grades and just what would be submitted in a typical application. And the words that he said were, they look for not just experiences lived, but experiences reflected upon. And I think that's a very beautiful notion of experiences. Because realistically speaking, you know, there are entire countries whose sole export is perfect SAT scores. And there are a lot of students, most of whom you'll speak to, who are very straight-laced and are very disciplined or focused on, you know, writing mathematical theses at an age like this, or deep knowledge of astrophysics or something of that sort, that didn't have experiences reflected upon to the same extent that we did, is what he argued. And I think that's something to learn from, right? Because you have two advantages when it comes to experiences and problems to learn from. And the first is that you're Crawfordians. I remember in 2017, I was taking history outside of school as an additional subject. And the teacher, then Dr. Nell, had said, we can't really coordinate a class time, nor can we coordinate a meeting or a venue or anything of that sort. So what we're going to do is we're going to download this thing called Google Hangouts, and we're going to have history as a subject online. Hey, so. I sat there thinking to myself, what is he on about now? This is so Crawford. This is the most Crawford, inventing elaborate solutions to problems that don't exist for no apparent reason. And I said, so what is this for? Can we not find another day to do it? He said, this is the future. And I indulged him, very determined that it wouldn't be the future. And I think I owe him quite a great deal, because in 2017, he managed to foresee just how important remote learning would become. And that is one of the most Crawfordy stories I could think of, because, you know, there is no Crawford way. The Crawford way is being individual, it's being wacky, and it's being unique. And that's something that you should all look to explore. Take a combination of subjects that makes you you, and that you can explore in a unique and entertaining fashion. Entertaining, I'm stressing that because that's important. At St. Redacted's, or whatever private school you want to insert there, you'll never have your teachers coming into an assembly dancing, right? You'll never have something like that. And coming from Crawford, that's something that each and every one of you shares, is this incredible ability to see things through a creative lens, a quirky lens, and quite frankly, almost a selfish lens of doing things in a way that you want to succeed and you want to be different from the crowd. That's the first thing. I'd say that the second thing is that you're South Africans. Realistically, not a lot of people there overseas know what it's like to have a country with a 33% unemployment rate. Very few of them know what it's like to have a massive insurrection, or to hang on the edges of your seats watching to see if the Constitution will be enforced or not. And I can guarantee you none of them know what it's like to support the protest during a World Cup. And through your exposure, just to adversity around you, you have the unique capacity to tell a story and to reflect upon your experiences that you have collected. And that's special, because when it comes to collecting experiences, you can also expand your mental capacity. Everyone kept telling me that taking 10 subjects, it was 11 at the time actually, was a foolish idea, and how could you possibly balance it? But willpower is a muscle, and your ability to absorb content is also a muscle based on the way you expand and adapt to circumstances. Captain Charlie Plum was a prisoner of war at the Hanoi Hilton during the Vietnam War, and he speaks about escaping from your mental prison, and that the most dangerous place is not the 8 feet between the walls of a cell, but the 8 inches between your ears, where you'll form this little prison for yourself and tell yourself that you can't do something. And that's something that you will not fall into. It's not a trap that you're capable of falling into because you're from Crawford and because you're from South Africa. You have exposure to adversity, and you know what it's like to be different, to have grit and tenacity and audacity to face those challenges. And you might think to yourself, well, what is my story and what is my grit? And, you know, Arthur Brooks, president of AEI, had actually said that post-traumatic growth can accrue from anything where you seek to define it. Right? And it's apparently a lot more common nowadays than PTSD, post-traumatic growth, because we're getting better at meditating and analyzing our problems and metacognition and all those fun things. And we've all gone through COVID, right? Anyone could write an essay about COVID. We all know what it's like, but it's about who's going to write the essay and who's going to actually introspect in terms of what did they learn from COVID? What are they doing that's different from their lives before COVID? What are they leaving behind and what are they expanding with? So what I'd like to say is there are innumerable problems out there. You need to take subjects that are going to help you solve those problems, and that are going to help you solve those problems in an entertaining way. And grade 11s, you're at the age, which sounds, makes me feel a little bit dated, but you're at the age now where you can start reflecting on what was your high school journey, where are you going with this, and what is it about to be, in a creative and audacious way. Don't try and conform by any means, and don't choose the smoothest track or the track to Duck Scholar or any of those things. Those things will come. The abundance will come as long as you have a good enough reason and a good enough problem that you wish to solve. And I think at the end of the day, perhaps rather than waking up and thinking what could go wrong with the assumption that nothing will, wake up and ask what could go wrong, hoping that everything will.
Thank you, Josh. Sello?
Thanks again for having me. Yeah, I mean, maybe to pick off on what Josh and Velani said, which was very beautiful, and actually a lot of it resonated with me. I think I was actually thinking, if somebody had to ask me what are the, I don't know, 5 or 3 or 2 pieces of advice you had, and if I was in grade 9 or grade 11 right now, what do I wish I knew? And I think it's tough to nail it down to a few things, but I've come up with 3 things that hopefully encompass a few other aspects, and maybe just to take a step back about and discuss a little bit about my journey. So, as Tammy said, I've got a lot of mentors and people at Crawford, teachers and friends, a few of them on the call that have helped me through this journey, and I was actually listening to that when Tammy was reading the bio and just thinking to myself, that doesn't sound like me. It's a different person, because I think when you go through life, you don't think of yourself as this accumulation of things and achievements. You just do what you do, and then it kind of happens. So I never really take the time to look back and think, oh, that happened. But I think the important message there I want to really hone in is, I had a lot of people help me, whether it be their time, whether it be their financial resources, whether it be their intellectual capacity, whatever it is. And that's very key, and I think an underappreciated or underrepresented aspect of success, if you want to call it. I think there's a huge amount of luck and a huge amount of people that come into your path at the right time, the right place, that, there are others who just as smart, just as hardworking, but don't reach the same potential just because they didn't have that luck and those people alongside them. So I just want to emphasize that, and I'm always grateful for those people that were part of my journey. In terms of, I don't want to bombard you with like a list of 10 things to do, but when I reflect on, what I know now and what I wish I knew when I was in grade 9 or grade 11, I think there are 3 things. I think the first, and both Velani and Josh touched on it very beautifully, is what I would call intellectual curiosity. I have a bit of a ongoing gripe with the educational system everywhere, really, where people are just trying to accumulate good grades. And please, do me a favor and don't do that. Just try to expand your brain, try and expand your understanding. And if it's a B or a C or a D, it does not matter. If you can look at yourself in the mirror and feel that you're learning, you're growing, and and that you're moving forward as a human being, that's the benchmark, that's the yardstick. So don't take courses just because you want to get an A, or don't do things just because you want to achieve something. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So the first thing I would say is just be an intellectually curious person. And intellectually curious doesn't mean just inside the classroom, right? It means outside the classroom. You have, you go to a school with so many smart, ambitious, well-rounded people. Try to get to know those people. Try to understand them. If Velani didn't try to understand his mates, you'd never have known that they need airtime. You've got to take an interest in the world around you. Just be curious about the world around you, whatever shape or form it takes. That's my first thing. The second thing is, I like reading a lot, and I like reading biographies. And one of the things that comes across many a times is the fact that no successful person has become successful without challenges, obstacles, failure, some of them very public. The more successful, the more public, really. And what keeps you going is you've got to have resilience. There's one of my favorite books by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. And he says, those who have a why will find a how. And I think once you know, and for each one of us, we want different things out of life, but once you know what it is that you want, if you just focus on that and pursue it, it'll make it easier. It won't make it easier when challenges come by, to stay focused on your journey and stay focused on your path. So the second message I want to leave with you is resilience. And if I was you, I know this sounds maybe counterintuitive, but I would want to fail sooner and greater in my life, because that teaches you so much so quickly. And I think if your life is just good grades, good this, good that, you don't learn the grit that's needed to actually go to the next level. So I think practice your resilience. And I think that just comes from when you have setbacks, as Josh said, reflect on them. What did you learn of those setbacks? There's going to be a different setback next time, but there are themes in those setbacks. And if you reflect and you try to get something out of it, you learn a lot from it. And the last thing, and I guess I touched on this at the beginning of my chat, is more people. Velani made a point around, attracting talent. The business world is not just about what's in your brain. It's also about the people around you. And you could be some of the smartest people. Actually, maybe let me put it the other way around. Some of the most successful or wealthiest people are not necessarily the smartest, but they are good with relationships. So harness those relationships. There's one of my favorite books by Adam Grant, Give and Take, and it talks about givers and takers and how givers are much more successful because you always give, and then you kind of plant a seed and you build relationships. So I would encourage you to, and don't build relationships from a superficial trying to get as much out of people as you possibly can, but just again have an interest in people, have an interest in the world around you, and just try to help people. It's I'm a strong believer in the cycle of generosity that you pass it on, and it's amazing how that ripple effect. If you do something good for somebody, they do something good for someone else. It just keeps going. So those are I know maybe it's a lot to digest, but if I just think of 3 things that if I was grade 9, grade 11 right now, and somebody said to me, 3 key things that I need to jot down, those for me would be it. It would be intellectual curiosity, resilience, and relationships. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Is there any questions maybe from the floor? You can raise your hand or type so we can recognize. While everybody is thinking, maybe a question from me. What degree would you recommend to go study, and why and where? Come, James, you guys are all 3 overseas. Talk to us about why, maybe, why the overseas universities, why not local? And what degree would you recommend that the guys do for going into the business world?
There's going to be some parents, and I know mine will if they can hear me, that are going to properly sweat when I say this, but I wouldn't recommend a set path or a degree. One of the beauties of the American education system, or the liberal arts education system, is that you arrive once you're in and you choose your path from there. And only by the end of second year, for example, at Stanford, do you choose your major or what you're studying. And I know a lot of sort of engineers that came in and are now studying literature, for example. But when it comes to applying that to business, there's a very big push at the moment for subject matter experts, right? And, every second person you talk to at Stanford is I'm going to go into IB or VC or any other acronyms that they can come up with, without any distinguishing factors other than the age at which they bought Bitcoin, perhaps, and how aggressively they'll pursue shorting the VIX, right? But what makes you different, and I was speaking to a McKinsey recruiter about this, is if you've pursued your own niche interest to such a depth that you can monetize that, or even just advise people who wish to monetize that, that will set you on a successful business path. It goes completely to what Sello said in terms of intellectual curiosity. So pursue your interests first, then work out how that's going to benefit you in a business world. Don't work out what's beneficial in a business world and then pursue that, would be my core advice.
Sello, you want to go next?
Yeah, no, I would. I think, Joshua, I'm going to echo that because obviously also studying in the US, I'll tell you a little story. When I went to the US, I wanted to be an actuary, and thank goodness I'm not. But sorry if there are any actuaries on the call. But yeah, and I think it was just a matter of not knowing. I think 17, 16-year-old me thought that you had to choose law, actuary, whatever, medicine. And then I got to the US, and it was, for the first 2 years, you don't have to choose a major. And even then, it's still, open to negotiation. And at the time, I remember phoning my mother and telling her that I'm taking psychology, and she was very worried. But I look back now, and I think, some of the classes where I learned the most are the ones that were not part of my major. So I took an English writing class, which was really helpful because I do a lot of communicating and writing in my job. And then I took a philosophy course, which is really helpful because a lot of what I do is analyzing companies and company management teams and trying to understand what makes them tick. Again, now, I like math, don't get me wrong, but I use very basic math, believe it or not, in my day-to-day life. And what doing math taught me is not so much just the formulae and algebra and calculus and all of that. What it taught me is critical thinking and reasoning. And that skill set, you can learn that from doing math, you can learn that from doing physics, you can learn that from doing history, you can learn it from different subjects, really. So I would think of it in terms of acquiring skills as opposed to subjects or courses. So think of the skills that you're interested in or that you want to acquire for whatever you want to do, and then try and marry those with the subjects that best suit that skill. So, if you want to be a writer, that could be anything from, there's a lot of writing in history, there's a lot of writing in English, but don't think of it as I want to be a writer, therefore I have to do a major in English. Like, that's not how to think of it. And to be honest, I'm 31 now. The last time somebody asked me what I did for studying, it's irrelevant. It matters for your first job. After that, it's can you produce? Can you make the business money? And that's it. You might, I think the founder of our business never even went to university. Now, I'm not encouraging that, but I'm just trying to make the point that it's about thinking. It's about that intellectual curiosity that I talked about. So, sorry, maybe it's a disappointing answer because you probably want me to say, oh, study economics, study math, study this, but really do whatever you want. Just use that brain, please.
I love that, Sello. I really, really love that you concluded with use that brain. To jump in, I think whenever the question of what do you want to study or where you should study comes up in many families and households, a lot of the reasons is, people tell you to choose a path that is more secure, right? So you go to university to become employed or become more employable because of the skill sets you develop. Maybe you become a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, an economist, whatever it may be. And all of that is very well. But if you are thinking about taking a path down business or entrepreneurship, you have to really ask yourself, especially if you want to be a visionary like Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Jack Ma, you have to take long-term bets and take a view of what the future needs to look like and how, against all odds, you think your view of the future is possible, right? So if you think that electric cars will be the norm over internal combustion engines, you have to have a framework of thinking that kind of, justifies it and how you can analyze things around not just, the share price and who's trading and, what costs more, but you have to analyze a lot of the social and environmental factors about why society is the way it is. So in my undergrad, I studied a degree called a PPE. Now, before COVID, PPE did not stand for politics, philosophy, and economics, right? So when we talk about PPE, that's exactly what I'm referring to, is politics, philosophy, and economics. And I chose that degree because I got accepted to WITS for aeronautical engineering. And I really wanted to build airplanes. I really wanted to fly them. I really wanted to be involved in spacecraft. But every time I'd come to school at the top of Benmore Road, there used to be people begging for money. And my dad asked me the question, he's like, what's the one thing you think of, when you wake up and when you go to sleep? And I was like, come on, Dad, like, what? Like, I think of a lot of things. And I realized that the thing that really, really caught my eye is, the people begging every day. And the answer I gave to him was, I think about why do people suffer? Why is the world the way it is? And at that point, I realized the most applicable degree that could help me understand the world, not just South Africa and Africa, but the world at large, was a degree in philosophy, politics, and economics, because those three disciplines effectively govern the way the world is. It governs why the US takes its position on Israel. It governs why, China is making big bets in Africa. It governs why, the UK is no longer part of Europe, and how that affects the relations between different countries. It affects why South Africa's economy is primarily focused on production and minerals, as opposed to India, which is, ICT and communications. And all those components helped me think, why is it that every time I go to school, there is someone at the side of the road who's begging for money? And I convicted myself to say, I want to live in a world where the guy on the side of the road has enough opportunity to empower himself and his people. And I would not have my own children, one day when I have them, have to go to a world where they see so much suffering that I saw. And so, of course, when I graduated, I wasn't a lawyer, an accountant, an engineer. In fact, most people couldn't tell me what I was, but I had a framework in which I could think about why the world is the way it is. It enabled me to take long-term bets. For example, I mean, I believe that, with all this climate change taking place, that people are eventually going to rely on shared transportation as opposed to single cars. And right now it seems impossible, but I guarantee you 5-10 years from now, it will be very different. And that's because we were able to take long-term bets and see the vision. To end that off, I'd probably say that with a lot of ways in which the markets are changing, a lot of consumers are becoming value driven. So they're not just going to buy a t-shirt or a pair of shoes because it's made by Nike. They buy it because they know that the way in which you produce those goods is sustainable. It's sourced by local farmers. It's all sorts of components that make the world a better place. And I say this because as entrepreneurs, as business people who are looking towards a future, you need to be kind of adverse to what things look like now and kind of say, what will the future look like and how you could play an active role. And when you go to university, maybe it's your, choice of psychology that helps you understand the way people think, that helps you become a successful businessman. Or maybe it's your, appreciation for the arts and science that helps you build the most sustainable products out there in the market. So choose whatever makes your heart and your vision for the future work, and build relationships on the way. And that's how I would go about doing it. And I think probably not put as much pressure on myself than I did when I was much younger. So.
Thanks, Velani. Guys, any other questions from the floor? Just raise your hand.
While we wait, maybe just to add to Velani's point on, when he graduated, he wasn't an accountant or a stockbroker or whatever, but he had a framework. I think that really resonates with me, because I think the reason we maybe want to choose something or study a particular path is that there's a security of knowing who you are and what you are in the world. And I remember my first job when I was in New York City. I was working for a broker dealer in investment banking. And, in New York, what happens is, as Josh will tell you, in the US, really, you can get fired very easily, very quickly. You're here today and you're gone tomorrow. And that's just, things are moving very fast. It's not you started a company and then you work there for your whole life and you retire and you get a nice pension. Anyway, I remember talking to one of the traders, which I'm still friends with, and his name is Wes Harrell. I said, Wes, I'm a young guy. I don't really have any kind of, a trust fund or anything to fall back on. I'm really worried. What if I get fired? And he said to me, why are you even thinking about that? I said, well, don't you worry about that? And he said, look, Sello, the thing is, I have a brain and I trust myself that I can monetize that brain wherever I go. So whether or not I get fired is irrelevant. I'm not going to waste my energy on that. And that was a very simple sentence, but it really stuck with me. And since then, I started thinking of myself as it's not what are you or what's your label, what's your tag is. Are you an enterprise that can solve problems, as Velani said, or can offer a skill set or a service that somebody needs? And that's the way you're going to succeed in the world. It's not about, are you an accountant? Are you an insurer? Are you this? Are you that? It's just, what do you offer to the world? What problems are you going to solve or help solve in the world? And once you frame yourself in that way and think of yourself that way, I think for me at least, it was very life-changing, because now, I go to work every day. I love my job, but I always think, if this doesn't work out, I've got a brain I can monetize elsewhere. I don't know what exactly, but I trust myself to monetize it somehow. And that's given me a lot of freedom. And actually, I would encourage you to start thinking of yourself as again, coming back to the intellectual curiosity and the brain, you're an enterprise. And as you expand, whether it be relationships, knowledge, whatever, you're building that enterprise, you're building that fort, and don't feel confined to a particular niche just grow your brain, grow your relationships, and you can monetize that however you want one day.
That sort of framework was part of why I also took more subjects than perhaps was wise. In that, I love the expression that there's no one more dangerous than someone with nothing to lose. And I used to think of that as kind of, there's this down on his luck guy who's just been fired and now has a path of vengeance towards something. But I think there's two types of having nothing to lose. There's getting to yourself into a position where you have nothing, but then there's getting yourself into a position where you have everything. And as Sello said, having a framework and having trust in yourself, and that you've studied things from all numbers of fields, that means that you don't have anything to lose, because if you lose one thing, another thing will come up straight away because you had faith in that and you had pursued something else. And that only means that you can keep pursuing more and more audacious goals, because well, if I get rejected, so what? There's nothing to lose, right? My life will be just as good, if not better, regardless of the outcome of this. And I think that's a very special way to approach it, is not confining yourself, but seeking to have so many things to your life that there is nothing to lose.
Perfect. Something else, what advice will you give to somebody trying to start a business in this new world that we live in? As I said, that's making a living. What advice would you give to the kids? Because when I was your age, you became a doctor, a lawyer, a chartered accountant, things like that was it. And quite often be getting the question, what jobs are going to be out there when they are 30 in 10 years' time? What advice would you give them?
Velani, I'm listening intently.
Well, I'll throw a spanner in the works and say, firstly, not everyone is going to be an entrepreneur or a business person. So I think it's important to get that out the room. So don't feel pressured to become a business person or an entrepreneur, because each and every one of us has our own unique paths. But if you are one of those people who wants to get involved, I'll just say, focus on a problem. Please do not focus on the money. By all means, please do not focus on the money. Focus on a problem. I tell you this because the amounts of ups and downs that you go through as an entrepreneur, you cannot be motivated by just money. You have to be motivated by, a view of the world in the future that you are so convicted of achieving that it's almost impossible for you not to see that vision. The second component is I would probably start as young as I can. If you have to sell airtime at class this coming week, do it. Just learn the principles of buying and selling and problem solving, because the reality is, as you get older, you have a husband or wife, you have children, you maybe have to take care of your parents. Your ability to take risks becomes really, really low because of the kind of impact of things not working out. So start as young as you can, even if it's something as basic as selling your notes for your tests that you've been studying for at university or at high school. Try engage with the principles of buying and selling very, very early on. The other thing is that I would definitely say, just look at some of the trends right now, like cryptocurrencies, machine learning, computer science. The world is definitely accelerating faster than we can to a world of greater automation, greater involvement with computers. So learn some sort of programming or computer science knowledge. And I think the last thing is be kind, be patient, and be resilient. Please don't ever look at Sello or Josh or Velani and say, I'm 20 years old and I haven't started $1 million business yet, and so my life is over. Please don't do that. Stay in your lane, focus on the unique problem that you want to solve. It's your conviction. It's not everyone else's conviction. And just be kind to yourself, right? If you think it's going to take you 3 years to reach success, it'll probably take you 6. If you think it's going to cost you $1 million, it'll probably cost you 5. If you think you'll get it right on the first time, you'll probably get it right on the third time. So be kind to yourself. Be kind to your friends. Be kind to your parents. Be kind to your siblings. Take your time, because there's nothing more toxic than short-term success or overnight success. So just be kind, be patient, be resilient, and solve a meaningful problem. And then everything, trust me, everything will follow you. everything will come right. The talent, the money, the market, all of it will come right.
Thanks, Velani. Perfect, guys. Any other questions from the floor? They're very shy today. I think you guys have made them shell-shocked there. I'll close down then with the question if none of them are there, if you guys have got nothing to add. The question that I had in another panel discussion, if you could go back to grade 9 and redo your subject choice, is there a specific subject that you would take that you didn't take? Or are you happy with your skill set? That came up in the arts panel, that someone asked that question. They said, if you could now go back to grade 9 with your knowledge that you've got now, and you've then got to re-choose subjects, is there a specific subject that you will definitely take that you maybe didn't take? Let's start with Josh. That's the youngest. That still can think. The other two has got to think back quite a while.
There were very few subjects that I didn't take, so it's quite a difficult. What stands out to me is I was going to take 12 subjects, merely because I wanted to and I liked them, and people said it's quite genuinely not feasible based on how the timetable works. And as a result, I ended up not taking AP English, which I don't think we offer anymore, but I really would have loved to explore that, because something that I had told myself was, I never get to read for fun anymore. I don't want to read in an academic direction and write an essay, which is still very true. But I think from a skills basis, you're always going to be reading to some higher end, and there never will just be idle time. And I think that would have taught me how to, read faster, but also be cognizant of analyzing literature in all its forms, and analyzing, perhaps extrapolating this, because I think in a business sense, few people would like to talk about Dead Poets Society. But, in general, don't reject any form of stimuli that is presented to you. Always see it as an opportunity that can be dissected. And at that point, the reason I dropped that subject was because I thought I don't want every source of stimulus to be a subject of academic study. So that's probably what I would have told myself. And also, don't drop things on the basis of fearing the number.
Okay, cool. I'll go next. I think my disappointment is that, you weren't, I wish I could have taken all the subjects, because I think being in high school is a really great place to just learn, especially now that I understand why I was learning what I was taught. So I would really, really have loved to do a lot more subjects. I mean, I already was doing more than was prescribed, but I still wish I could have had maybe another 3. But of course, I was playing soccer and rugby with Mr. Smith and touch rugby and all those good sports. So I couldn't let my books take precedent over my loyalty to Mr. Smith. So I think it's understood. But if I had to reflect and do my subjects again, I would keep the same subjects I chose. And if there was capacity to do more, I would probably have taken art, so visual arts, because I think whilst it's great to have the math, science, bio, and all those cool things, I think everyone needs to exercise their creative side of their brain and do it in a way that just reflects their passion. And I loved to draw, I loved to paint, I loved creativity. It just unfortunately wasn't a requirement to get into the fields I wanted to study. So definitely have done art. Secondly, I would have done more computer-based subjects. So I think we had CAT or computer sciences at the time. I would have definitely gotten involved in that, just because, I mean, I employ quite a number of software developers right now, and it kind of sucks when you don't understand everything they know. So I would have definitely done more computer program. And lastly, and I say this with the deepest amount of conviction, I would have taken history. I really enjoyed history in grade 8 and 9, and when I had to choose my subjects, I was really upset that I never got to take history, for the simple fact that if you want to know where you're going, you have to know where you come from. And with the amount of change that's taking place around the world, understanding your history is super, super important. I look at how much content is available online about African history, Latin American history, Asian history, European history. It's so, so important to understand why the world is the way it is. And of course, they always say, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. So all the kind of atrocities we've seen in the world, things like the apartheid times, the Holocaust, the genocides, all of those components, they are in our history, but they are bound to repeat themselves if you don't know our history. So I would have definitely tried to emphasize that as much as I can. So those are the three things I would have done.
Yeah, no, one of them I share with you, Velani. So I've got two. The first would be computer science, or I think it was IT maybe.
Yeah.
I forget exactly. And I regret not, the reason I didn't take it at the time is I think partly a misunderstanding of what it was. I think I associated IT with, like, all my friends who were doing it at the time were gamers. They liked fixing computers, and I'm not that kind of person. But actually, if I'd known that there was a big software element of it, which is what I'm really interested in, not the back end stuff, then I would have definitely taken it. And yeah, for the simple reason that that's how the world works. And similar to Velani at work, we have a data analytics team. I was actually talking to them today. And, I have to do a lot of work and send it to them and have them do some stuff for me, which I could do myself if I really knew what I was doing. So it creates a bit of an inefficiency where you can always outsource it. But I'm a strong believer that when you have a 360 view of a project, even if you don't do every single thing yourself, but if you have a 360 understanding, it just makes you that much more effective. And I see in my day-to-day work that kind of that gap of programming or software development or computer science, whatever you want to call it, it's definitely visible. The second is music. And the reason I say that is I think obviously the panel today is very specific and it's about business. But one of the important things is in order to succeed, however you want to define success. By the way, one thing maybe I should have mentioned earlier, which slipped my mind, is success is personal. Success is not money. Success is not prestige. It's not title. Success, my mother, who black woman growing up during apartheid South Africa, father died she was 19. She is one of the most successful people I know. And why? Because she had 3 kids who all of which she sent to university, and all of them graduated and they've got a good life. And she did that on her own. And, that for me is success. Now, is my mother a billionaire? Far from it. But she's probably one of the most successful people that I know. So success is very personal and it's based on what you want to get out of life. Anyway, I digress. But what I was getting at with music is, in order to be successful, you've got to be a balanced person, right? And I think, I now increasingly am more into meditating and things like that. I drive around in the countryside, and I think music would be a nice way to just unwind. I like listening to music, and I think if I could play an instrument, that would be quite nice. And also just to engage a different side of your brain. I think we've said repeatedly today that you want to be able to think broadly and acquire different skill sets. So I think those, if I'd done music, that would have been quite good. It's not too late, but I need a bit of a nudge, and I'll take some music lessons. But those are the 2 for me, I would say.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's really appreciated and very interesting. Thank you for your time. It's greatly appreciated. And I've still got the soccer jersey. That kit, unfortunately, is not available anymore. That was a big time ago, but we'll knock you up for a sponsorship one of these days. When the soccer can hopefully start again. But
please
yes,
do. I don't like to be held accountable to the general public, but I'll definitely commit to sponsoring the soccer team. So let's chat offline and we can make something happen. It would be my honor to do that.
Thanks, V. Really appreciate it. But gents, really, really, your time is greatly appreciated, and thanks for always giving back. It's appreciated, and as you guys said, that's what it's about. That Ubuntu. What can we do for others to greet others where we are, and that is so true in this current situation that we're in.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you all. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. So much fun.
Pleasure. Bye.
Thanks. Cheers.